We are back again with Behind the Magic, a podcast from Aradia's Closet. I'm Tanya, your host, and I am here with my friend Stephen, and we are going through his awesome library, 10 books at a time. Hi, Stephen.
Hey! How you doing, Tanya?
I am fantastic. Thank you.
Hey, folks.
Thank you for doing this with me. It really means a lot.
No problem whatsoever. I enjoyed it every time.
Good. I'm so
it's
glad.
My pleasure. How many books would you say are in this library?
3,000.
What?
3,000.
What?
I counted them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, I did
That's
a rough
crazy.
estimate based on how many books are on the shelf and how many, shelves.
Well, yeah, that works. The library was actually started haphazardly in the early 1970s when it dawned upon me that I marched to the beat of a different drummer, to say the least. I found this to be true when I was walking through a bookstore, a local bookstore. I think it was called Booklinden in the day. I think it was off of Fairfield Drive in Pensacola, Florida. So I walked by this section and a book just like it jumped off the shelf and fell at my feet. And it was called The Witch's Almanac. I picked it up and I'm like, well, that's curious. And I thumbed through it and I thought, oh, I like this. I like this a lot. And that began the journey of book collecting and media collecting and witchcraft and Wicca that we have today with, what'd you say, 3,000 books?
3,000 books.
That's a lot of books.
At least.
So we're starting tonight on this set of 10 books with Raymond Buckland's Practical Candle
Burning.
Yes,
by Raymond
Practical
Buckland.
Candle Burning.
Spells and Rituals for Every Purpose. When you
Yes,
bought this book,
indeed.
you bought this book for $2.
$2 in the very early 70s. What's the publication
So
date?
this book was put out by Llewellyn.
Yes,
it says here, a Llewellyn Occult Guide. Ooh. 1972 is this publication. But I think
1972, I think I was a junior in high school.
It was originally published in 1970. And then I have a copy of this book.
I think I was in 6th grade then.
6th grade?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you got it a little bit later.
Yeah, maybe indeed.
I have this book, but it's like a way newer version.
It's a what?
Way newer version with a newer
Way
cover.
newer.
I think so. So anyway.
Okay, so earlier before we came on the air, a discussion broke out about this book. And Tanya says that she owns another copy, a newer version of this. I don't think she does. I think that she owns a reprint of Practical Candle Burning by Raymond Buckland. Spells and Rituals for Every Purpose. An interesting book. I purchased it out of my allowance in the early 70s. So
you tell me about it.
So anyway, what I remember about this book was the fact that it had a Christian version of these candle spells and a pagan version. And it wasn't until years later when I realized that this book, the better part of it, had been previously published, probably in the 1930s or something like that. It was called The Guiding Light to Power and Success by Mikhail Strabo, a study of the use of candles and the search for the truth. Basically, though, this is a spell book. And basically what Raymond Buckland did was he took from this book all the significant portions and then added a quasi-pagan element to it, which I found quite distracting. I think that working with the Psalms and magic is fine. I don't think you need a pagan Wiccan version. And your response, ma'am?
My response is I just showed you the video where I have this book and it has a purple cover with the girl on it with the moons.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Mm-hmm. And then I have a totally different book. It's called Master Candle Burning. And
Master Candle Burning. Who's
that
by?
It's also by Raymond Buckland. And I swear to God, it has a yellow cover with a black drawing of a candle.
Okay. This sounds like an earlier edition of the original book. What is it? The Guiding Light. Because I have an early. This edition of that book is by Lucky Mojo, and they're great. But I have an earlier edition in yellow that is the very same book, and I will show that to you.
Okay.
Eventually.
The book that I have in my hand right now is called The Guiding Light to Power and Success.
Right.
By Mikhail Drabo,
Mm-hmm.
a study of the use of candles in the search for the truth.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. The Search for the Truth. Actually, it's still a spell book, though. It's got all kinds of very, very Hoodoo is amazing for this. It has very, very practical solutions for common problems that come up. You need money, then you dress a candle in money drawing oil, and you say a certain psalm maybe or not, but it fixes the problem. You got people gossiping about you, well, you need some no gossip oil. I'll take care of it. You got a bad neighbor, you collect the dirt from his footsteps, you take that and you wind it up in a handkerchief, and you throw it in the river at sundown, and he will shortly be gone.
Good riddance.
Good riddance indeed.
But this book was put out by Lucky Mojo Library of Occult Classics in 2020. They're from
2020.
Forestville, California.
Right. However, the original copy of this is from the 1930s, and that's the yellow book with the candle on it that you're talking about. This is simply Lucky Mojo's version, but I have a much earlier version. I think that's the version you're thinking about.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later. Let's move on, because we've got a lot to do.
Okay, moving on. Okay, so our next book is Call of the Horned Piper by Nigel Jackson. And this was put out in 1994 by...
Koppelban?
Yes, by Koppelban Publishing.
Yup. Okay, here we go. This is an entry into the traditional witchcraft series. So this book basically is talking about traditional witchcraft. And traditional witchcraft, as far as I'm concerned, started with Paul Hewson mastering witchcraft. But he always talked about the traditionally minded witch. He was not talking about any kind of cult that could be traced back through millennia. That's actually very, very difficult to do as far as the history of the craft. This is an excellent book if you want to explore traditional heathen witchcraft. I like it very much. It's part of my library. I put it right up there with Paul Hewson's Mastering Witchcraft. If you've never read Mastering Witchcraft, you need to get on it because it's a classic in witchcraft.
And it just keeps getting more expensive.
And it does keep getting more and more expensive. If you want a original hardbound copy of Mastering Witchcraft, you're looking at something like $75 on eBay. So get it now because it's not getting any cheaper.
I bought my copy from Dauphin Street Books in New Orleans for $20. And
nice.
It's the original hardcover with the dust jacket.
Really?
For $20.
The original 1970 hardback copy. Yep. That was not bad.
Right? I know, right?
I came across a copy of it at the local flea market, and it was $5. And I picked it up, and I was looking at it, and the shopkeeper came right up to me and says, "Hey, look, you can just buy that book for $1." I was like, "Really?"
Wow.
And she says, "Yeah, I just want it gone."
Oh, goodness.
I want it gone. I'm like, okay.
I'll take it.
I was aware of the controversy that was associated with Paul Hewson's Mastering Witchcraft.
Okay, our next book is very interesting. It's Iamblichus.
The Greek philosopher.
I think he's a philosopher. So this is Iamblichus on the mysteries of the Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Assyrians, translated from the Greek by Thomas Taylor. It was put out in 1997 by Wizards Bookshelf.
1999 by Wizards Bookshelf. That thing goes back to the 1800s.
Yes, but this copy here, with its nice library binding, yeah, it's got this nice platelet on the inside. Let's see, table of contents. No pictures.
Right off the bat, I can tell you there are better versions, thank God, of this book out now. On the Mysteries of Iamblichus. No, it's actually the book is called On the Mysteries by Iamblichus, translated by Thomas Taylor. And again, please look for better versions of this. This is nice to have, but it's just not well translated. But it's about the Greek mysteries and that sort of thing. It's well worth a read, but in a different edition. Thank you, Mr. Thomas Taylor.
Okay, so our next book, The Pillars of Tubal-Cain.
I love this book.
Nigel Jackson and Michael Howard.
Yes, Michael Howard, more modern traditional witchcraft stuff.
This was Koppel-Band Publishing.
Yeah, they did a lot of work in the traditional witchcraft field, and their work was really good. And I urge you, buy and read this book. You got to find if it's still available. It's called The Pillars of Tubal-Cain. It's a discussion of traditionally minded witchcraft, which, as we know, started with Paul Houston, who talked about traditionally minded witches. So there was Solomonic magic involved with that sort of thing. Alexandrian magic derives from that kind of traditional witchcraft magic without any modern appellations. But The Pillars of Tubal-Cain, fantastic book. When I started reading it, I didn't stop reading it. It was just one of those books that you just sail right through it because it's so good, so very, very good. If you're into witchcraft, you are into this. And without any further ado, if it's still available, The Pillars of Tubal-Cain, Nigel Jackson and Michael Howard, two seriously heavy hitters in the traditional witchcraft area. It's what I'm into. It's what Tanya's into. It's what most of my friends are into. We don't like New Age Wicca. I have nothing to do with TikTok witches.
Maybe not you.
Well, from what I've seen, Hex the Moon, really? I don't think so.
Okay, well, I am a TikTok witch. You can also find Aradia's Closet
I'm not speaking to you anymore. How about that?
You can also find Aradia's Closet on YouTube, Instagram. You can go to aradiascloset.com to find all of your favorite stuff. Our next book, The Devils of Loudun by Huxley, put out by Harper & Brothers in 1953. This is an interesting looking book.
What's even more interesting is the movie called The Devils. And that was in the early 1970s. So based on the Aldous Huxley, which I'm holding before me, The Devils of Loudun. This is based on a true story, and it's a horrific story where a politically active priest in Loudun, France, and I think it was, the 1500s or so? But at any rate, it is a compelling story of a man who speaks truth to power, but winds up murdered by the state. It is a gripping story, and it's a true story. The basic synopsis is, there's a priest in Loudun who spoke out against the current monarchy, which was not a good idea. He thought he was safe.
No.
But that was Father Giraldi, and he did have a sexual proclivity for some of the nuns at the nunnery of Loudun, and he did have some affairs there. And he did happen to knock off the local magistrate's daughter, which he claimed he didn't do, which is fairly obvious that she was pregnant. So he made lots of enemies and wound up being brutally tortured, murdered, and eventually burned at the stake. The story is absolutely horrific, but it's well worth studying the sociological situation. I like that book. I like that movie. It's got Vanessa Redgrave in it, The Devils. You can look at it. It's free on YouTube.
Is it now?
Yes. You'll have an amazing experience. And you'll be a better person for it.
Okay, so our next book is an interesting looking book. When I first picked it up, I looked at the cover and I thought, this is in the wrong section. But it is a book, in fact, on magic. It's another one of Llewellyn Publications, 2004. Author Mark McElroy, Putting the Tarot to Work. Creative problem solving, effective decision making, and personal career planning. This guy in the front here, he's wearing a suit. He's got stacks of money with a cigar. I might have to read that next.
Good book. I remember reading this, I read it all the way through. It's got a lot of tips on using the tarot for business advantage, that sort of thing. It's a kind of guide to climb the corporate ladder in a very, very occult way. Most folks, though, that are in corporate culture, though, they really don't think in terms of magic and the tarot. They really don't. This is a very, very good book. I'm not sure whether it's in print anymore, but I enjoyed reading. I absolutely never applied any of its ideas to my financial situation. But I do recommend, if it's still in print, Putting the Tarot to Work. It looks like without looking at the date of publication, it looks like a very, very 80s book. Not bad if you can find a copy of it. It's actually kind of enigmatic work. The cover is amazing. We're going to get a picture of this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. Because you look at it, it's a guy in a very nice suit, holding a cigar, The book did offer some very serious, very good suggestions. But again, people that are in business, they're very practically minded people. They're probably earth people, like Taurus, that sort of thing. Right? They're not going to be reading no tarot cards or anything like that.
Right. So our next book, The Hymns of Orpheus by Thomas
gosh, that's
Taylor.
So wonderful.
The Hymns of Orpheus, translated from the original Greek with a preliminary dissertation on the life and theology of Orpheus, to which is added the essay of Plotinus concerning the beautiful, by Thomas Taylor, facsimile reprint of the original English edition of 1792. Introductory preface by Manly P. Hall. And this is the Philosophical Research Society, and this was published in 1981.
No, actually, it goes back way further than that. I've got a couple of copies of this, one of them being a much more modern translation, all right? But it's an important work. If you're studying any sort of classical neo-paganism, that sort of thing, I do not hesitate but to recommend it. It is Orphic hymns, and if you're writing ritual, the Hymns of Orpheus is just absolutely de rigueur, absolutely required. It's just a wonderful resource book. And again, I have two versions of this. The one that Tanya just talked about, the date and all that sort of thing. Dates probably to the 1800s when it was originally transcribed by Taylor, but there's a newer version that is much more specific and can be used for writing ritual. It's very good, and highly recommend if you're working in any sort of pagan situation where you're writing ritual or that sort of thing, that you get this book. You should own it. It helped me a great deal in writing ritual for Goddess Spell.
The next book we have is The Magic of Aleister Crowley by John Simons.
It's the infamous Uncle Al.
Yes. First published in Great Britain by Frederick Muller Limited in 1958.
Naturally, the British. This is The Magic of Aleister Crowley, one of the very early biographies, Aleister Crowley. The Great Beast, Uncle Al. Here's a weird thing about reading Aleister Crowley. Things start popping up. Like you'll read anything related to Aleister Crowley and be going down the road, and you look at the license plate in front of you, and it's like something like 666 something, You'll see images of Horus, that sort of thing. Aleister Crowley's dictum was, I shall endure. What was it? It was one of his magical names. I forget right off the bat. But it meant I shall endure. And sure enough, years after his death, he wound up on the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour. I think he's the second from the left on that. They were fond of his dictum, do what the Beatles were fond of his dictum, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. So, yeah, this is one of those things I bought off eBay years ago, and I'm very glad I did. Probably quite collectible. It's illustrated, and it's from a long time ago. And it's by John Simons, who's been discredited as a biographer. Some heavier fans of Uncle Al find his analysis of Uncle Al rather distasteful.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
So our next book is The Candle and the Crossroads.
Oh my God.
A book of Appalachian conjure and Southern root work.
No, it's not that. I'm sorry.
It's by Ryan Foxwood.
No.
What? It's your book?
No.
First published in 2012 by Weiser Books.
It should have been strangled at birth.
What?
There's a lot of new books on about hoodoo, Southern conjure, that are taking the New Age path with crystals and that sort of thing. This is not genuine Southern conjure. Nobody was using crystals and stones back then, back in the day. This is not authentic craft. And I absolutely speak out against this on a regular basis. I don't care how upset you get. This is a load of nonsense. Go back to your original sources. Go back and read the Lucky Mojo page on historical Southern conjure, okay? I don't got time for this kind of nonsense.
Oh, goodness. Well then, tell us how you really feel.
I think I just did.
Okay. Moving on to our last book, 9 Lives, The Folklore of Cats, by Catherine Briggs. And this was put out in 1980, originally published in Great Britain by Routledge and Keegan Paul.
Right, so that's going to be a several second, third edition or something like that, because this has been around for quite a while. Of course, the lore of cats plays heavily in magic and witchcraft. I mean, you can't picture a witch at Halloween without her black cat, arched back. They even put that stuff on certain lucky hoodoo candles. I love this book. It's fantastic. This is a 1980 printing. Catherine M. Briggs. But I'm feeling like it probably came out a whole lot earlier. But this is a very, very good book that looks at the cat in folklore, magic, and witchcraft. It's an exhaustive resource. If you're a writer, you need this book, particularly if you're going to write about cats, magic, and that sort of thing. It's just a great, great resource. And I recommend it for anybody writing in the genre of magic, fairies, witches, and cats. This is fantastic. Catherine Briggs, 9 Lives, The Folklore of Cats. Just wonderful.
And there you have it, folks. We made it through another 10 books. Join us next week for 10 more.
Yep.